Nintendo really thought they were unstoppable following the success of the original Switch until today. You see, now that the holiday season is behind us, sales data is slowly starting to trickle out into the public, and the truth is that things are not looking good for the Switch 2 outside of Japan. And the best part is that we apparently already have at least one Nintendo employee trying to damage control the situation, and it's probably because their stock price is down almost 30% in the last 6 months. But don't worry folks, Nintendo just announced a brand new $100 controller. Yes, I wish I were kidding, but see, Nintendo, this is part of the problem. What are you doing? Folks, let's dive in and figure out what is going on with the Nintendo Switch 2 this time. But first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Guys, I need to thank you because you guys recently hyped one of my videos to be number 82 in the entire United States, which just goes to show that liking the videos actually helps them out a ton. So thank you guys, seriously. All right, folks, let's jump right in here. This story is brought to us by Christopher Dring over at The Game Business. Nintendo Switch 2 sales stumble over Christmas. Now, a lot was actually covered in their show. As you can see here, it's over an hour long. I'm gonna link to this in the description below. Chris has a great conversation with Keza over here from The Guardian. Really sorry if I mispronounced that, by the way, but anyway, again, please support their show. It will be linked in the description below. But let's talk about the Switch 2 sales stumbling over Christmas, because as you guys know, we reported here on the channel that the November Circana data for the Switch 2 was shockingly low. Like, it was worse than people's lowest expectations for the Switch 2. In fact, the Switch 2 this year sold worse than the Switch 1 last year in November, which is just nobody thought it would be that bad. Even people who thought it was going to be bad didn't think it would be that bad. A console's first holiday should definitely be more successful than the previous console's last holiday. It was really abysmal, right? So going into December, a lot of people were wondering what the sales data was going to be throughout Christmas, right? And of course, we saw starting on December 1st on Cyber Monday, that's when the retail price drops started, which, by the way, there is one retailer in the United States that has already done a price drop on the Switch 2 in 2026. Yeah, we're not talking about Christmas anymore. We're talking about today, January 8th, 2026. There is one retailer that dropped the price by $50 already, but there is a catch. We'll talk about that later in the video, okay? That's just like the icing on the cake here. Like, we're still seeing price drops in the new year. Like, again, my Cyber Monday analysis of the price drop was just, it's aging like fine wine. Like, I immediately called it, and this is like the 4th time I've been right in a row. But anyway, let's actually take a look at what the Game Business reported over here. Nintendo Switch 2 sales momentum slowed over the key holiday sales period, particularly in Western markets. It follows a huge launch for the console in June, when Switch 2 became the fastest selling game console with over 3.5 million units sold in just 4 days. The Game Business understands that Switch 2 sales, this is the bombshell right here, okay? The Game Business understands that Switch 2 sales in the United States over the holiday period, which they specify November and December, was down by around 35% compared to what the Switch 1 delivered during the same period in 2017, which was when it launched. This follows a separate report from US data tracker Circana, which reveals that US console sales overall had their worst November since 1995. We actually talked about that in a previous video. Circana's December figures are due later in the month, and at the time of recording this, we should be about 10 days or less away from that information coming out. But the article goes on to say there are also mixed results across Europe. In the UK, Switch 2 sales for the last 8 weeks of the year were 16% lower than what Switch 1 managed during the last 8 weeks of 2017. So again, we're seeing in the UK the Switch 1's holiday season of 2017 versus the Switch 2's holiday season of 2025, and that data was brought to us by Nielsen IQ. All right, now I will say, and this is something that I'm a little bit uneasy about, right? This makes me feel a little bit weird here. In the previous paragraph where they said the Game Business understands that Switch 2 sales in the US over the holiday from November to December was down 35%, they don't actually link a source there. So I just want to be abundantly clear. I am aware of that, and I don't know where is that number coming from, right? Like if we don't have the Circana data yet, I am curious as to where they're getting that information. I didn't watch the entirety of their episode here, but I did go through the sales data portion of it and they don't actually say, so that is a bit of a red flag. So really we have to wait for the Circana data to come out, but if they are confident enough to report it here on the game business, then we're going to talk about it here on the channel, because a lot of you guys might not know this. I'm not a journalist, all right? Never claimed to be either. I am top 3 biggest goofballs on YouTube. In fact, I have no idea what I'm talking about. We're just covering stuff that I think is interesting. So if they're comfortable releasing that information, then I'll talk about it, right? And maybe it's wrong. Anyway, I thought it was important to be fully transparent and point that out. Okay, let's move on with the article. They go on to say, when we add in Switch 1 UK sales, the overall number of Nintendo devices sold during November and December 2025 are up 7% compared with the same period in 2017. So what they're saying is, okay, in 2025, if you take all the Switch 2 sales and all the Switch 1 sales, then it is 7% higher than just Switch 1 sales for 2017, which by the way is a completely meaningless number. It does not matter. Nobody cares about the combined sales data. Circana, if you're watching, don't do that stupid stuff again where you combine the Switch 1 and Switch 2. We all know what you're doing. You're clearly trying to spin it to be more positive towards Nintendo. Okay, no, let me just be clear. All right, nobody really cares about Switch 1 plus Switch 2 sales, right? That's like saying, oh, what were the Switch plus 3DS sales back at, like, no, stop it. Okay, just stop it. No one cares about that. Just release the Switch 2 sales data. Okay, anyway, again, they go on to say overall for the year, Switch 2 UK sales are 6% higher than what Switch 1 managed in its first year, which was also on sale for 14 extra weeks. Okay, so again, Switch 1 came out I think in around March, Switch 2 came out in June. So from launch to the end of the year, there was more time for the Switch 1, and yet it still is the case that the launch for the Switch 2 was so successful that it actually, sales are still up for the Switch 2 in the UK compared to the Switch 1's year. So that just goes to show how much supply was available and how much hype was available for the launch of the Switch 2. And now that we see those sales start to slow throughout the holiday season, because remember, the economy was not good in June, just like it's not good now. Okay, so we can't like point to the economy, oh, the economy's bad. It's like, yeah, it's been bad all year. Like, what, you're late to the party, welcome to the party, I'm glad you finally made it, right? But the economy's been bad since like 2023 or something, or even before that. Anyway, they go on to say the most disappointing result was in France, which is typically one of Nintendo's key European markets. This was actually surprising to me. According to data shared with the game business, Switch 2 sales in France last year were over 30% lower than what Switch 1 achieved in its first year. As a result, the UK was bigger than France for Switch 2 sales in 2025. Now again, we have to still remember when the Switch 1 launched versus when the Switch 2 launched. Okay, that is definitely a factor. Okay, the Switch 1 had more weeks on the market in 2017 than Switch 2 in 2025, but even still, like we just said with the UK and with Japan and with the USA, the launch sales were absolutely through the roof. So France, loving Nintendo stuff, you would think it would still be higher, but it's actually not. They go on to say France was an outlier in terms of full year results. Nevertheless, all major European markets saw a slowdown in Switch 2 sales momentum over the Christmas sales window. Again, we've been reporting on this on the channel. If you watch my videos before, you'll already know that the hype for the Switch 2 just is not what people thought it would be going into Christmas. In fact, here's what a Nintendo employee has to say about this. One senior Nintendo employee told me that a complicated economic landscape mixed with higher price points and the absence of a major Western game during Christmas could make for tough comparisons with Switch 1, but overall, he's proud of what was accomplished during a tricky year. Okay, so this is what I talked about at the very beginning of the video. We already see at least this one employee who is unnamed and anonymous for good reason. I can imagine why. They're coming out and throwing out a couple of different excuses as to why the Switch 2 is underperforming in the Christmas season. Okay, let's start with complicated economic landscape. That's true. That's 100% true. Let's just be honest here. That is a valid data point to look at when we talk about why the Switch 2 might be struggling, right? We see global trade was crazy literally all throughout the year, especially in the first half, right? Plus we've got inflation, plus we've just got people getting laid off all over the place. Like, it is in fact a complicated economic landscape. Now we're going into the AI world where prices for RAM and things are surging. So I get that, right? Let's move on to his second point, higher price points. Okay, so this one, actually, this is also true, but this one is Nintendo's fault. Actually, you know, you look at the complicated economic landscape, cheap. It's like, okay, fair enough, like that's outside of Nintendo's control. You can't control what tariffs look like, you can't control what RAM prices look like, right? But you can control your higher price points, you know what I mean? And this is absolutely why we saw retailers slashing their price for the Switch 2 during its first ever holiday season in December, literally throughout all of December. And even right now, again, we'll talk about this later, but there's still a retailer out there that has a $50 price reduction on the Switch 2. We'll talk about that in a second. And no, it's not the bundled version. So the retailers arrived at the conclusion in December that the price point was a key factor in slower sales, and they basically decided on their own to lower prices, right? We've been transparent about this on the channel. The price reductions we saw in December from Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Micro Center, everybody else involved, Amazon, those were retailer price reductions because the retailers had the real-time data and were like, wow, this thing is not moving like we thought it would. Let's lower the price and see if it's the price. And then what do you know, they kept the price low for almost the entire month, which just goes to show that, yeah, actually the price is a problem. Okay, and so here we see, not only did we see a lot of Nintendo fans echo this concern when the console was announced, by the way, the whole drop the price crowd, right? They said this all the way back in April. So we see Nintendo fans say it, we saw the retailers arrive at this conclusion all on their own in December, and now we have a senior employee from Nintendo coming out and saying that a higher price point was a problem for the Switch 2 selling in holiday. That's not my opinion, that is from the mouth of a senior Nintendo employee. So everyone out there who's saying, oh, it's not the price, it's not the price, you're wrong. At this point, everyone already figured it out. The retailers, Nintendo, the fans, everyone already figured it out. You're late to the party, welcome to the party, it's fine, we forgive you. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you want more correct opinions on everything. I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm just kidding. But let's tackle the third thing that this senior Nintendo employee said: absence of a major Western game. Again, 100% true, but unfortunately for Nintendo, this is also something that is in their control. Why wouldn't they launch this thing with a 3D Mario? Why wouldn't they launch this thing with a brand new Zelda? Why wouldn't they launch this thing with an actual good Pokemon game, right? Don't even at me with Legends ZA, okay? The Mega Dimensions DLC proved that I was right about Legends ZA all along, and there's just people who realized I was right and people who haven't admitted it yet, but I was right about Legends ZA, okay? So again, two of these three excuses that we see coming from a senior Nintendo employee. By the way, senior Nintendo employee, this guy isn't just like packing the delivery trucks from the warehouse, okay? This is a senior Nintendo employee according to Christopher Dring. All right, I'm relying on him as a source here. Again, top 3 biggest goofballs on YouTube. I don't know what I'm talking about, but a senior Nintendo employee is saying this, and two of these things are just completely Nintendo's fault. These were in their control and they failed to deliver here, right? So hopefully going into 2026 we see a change, but plot twist, I'm not holding my breath. Okay, I'm not holding my breath. Now it could be a big year. Maybe we'll talk about that later, depending on how much time we have. This video is already getting long, but anyway, the article goes on to say, in terms of the Japanese market, Switch 2 finished strongly, but sales were a little lower over November and December compared with the Switch 1 launch year. For the last 9 weeks of 2025, 1.32 million Switch 2 consoles were sold in Japan from Famitsu. Okay, obviously we've talked about Famitsu on the channel. This is slightly down about 5.5% on the 1.39 million units that the Switch 1 sold over the same period in 2017. Now I will say that I believe part of the reason why the Switch 1 outsold in these 9 weeks is that Mario Odyssey might have landed right in there at the end. Okay, the 9 weeks leading up to Christmas, I think Mario Odyssey launched right in that window, so I think that's probably why the Switch 1 was pulled up a little bit, whereas the Switch 2 had just a trickle out of games every month. We had Metroid, Kirby Air Riders, and yada yada, you get the drill. Anyway, the article goes on to say, however, it was an impressive year in Japan overall, with Switch 2 sales up 11% compared with the launch year of Switch 1, despite the Switch 1 being on sale longer. Like we said earlier, the Switch 2 proposition in Japan is stronger than it is in Western markets, with a cheaper Japan only version of the console well, priced at roughly $335. This is why a lot of times you see there are, you know, Nintendo fanboys that they're always like, oh my god, look how good it's doing in Japan, oh my god, it's flying off the shelves in Japan. And it's like, buddy, it's over $100 cheaper. Like, what are we even talking about? That's a huge difference. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if they drop the price by $100, how many of you guys would buy it? I know a lot of you guys in the audience, you don't like the Switch 2, so maybe you guys wouldn't, right? But if we think about the normies out there, I think, yeah, a lot of people would buy it if it was $100 off. Like, that's a huge price difference. Actually, going from $449 to $335 is a 25% price cut, right? So like, it's super disingenuous to be like, wow, the console's flying off the shelves in Japan, I wonder why it's so popular, look how good. It's like, no kidding, it's so much cheaper. It's not a little bit cheaper, it's so much cheaper over there. Anyway, they go on to say also the Switch 2 lineup for holiday 2025 was better suited to Japanese player tastes, with Kirby Air Riders one of the key releases. Kirby is a popular IP in Japan, and Air Riders has already sold over 420,000 units since its released box sales only. Looking ahead, Switch 2's release slate for 2026 is currently lacking a major first-party game. Nintendo's announced lineup is made up of Mario Tennis Fever, which they released a new trailer today, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, The Dusk Bloods, and Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. However, Keza McDonald feels Switch 2 exclusive Pokemon Pokopia, in which players build their own Pokemon Paradise, might be one to watch. That game is due on March 5th. Well, as we talked about in my last video, over the last month, only 900 people pre-ordered it on Amazon, which is a shockingly low number when you think about the fact that the launch hype and the launch sales for Legends EA was like, what, 5 point something million? So like, yeah, 900 people, more than 900 people are gonna like this video. Like, it's nothing. There's not, look how small this channel is. 900 is nothing. Anyway, other key titles include Switch 2 updates to Animal Crossing New Horizons and Super Mario Wonder. More details on upcoming Switch 2 games will likely be revealed in the coming weeks, including products designed to tie in with the 30th anniversary of Pokemon, and also I think it's the 40th anniversary of Zelda this year, right? So really, there should be something big coming in 2026. I mean, like, they have no excuse, right? You've got all these anniversaries, and yet we're still sitting here thinking like, okay, what's the big game we're looking for? And it's like, is it Pokemon Pokopia? Like, that would be surprising, right? Is it Dusk Bloods? Maybe it's Dusk Bloods, right? Which would be also surprising because it's not a first party Nintendo game, but maybe, I mean, you're not going to be able to play it anywhere else. But I mean, really, as of the time of recording this, we don't know what the big game of 2026 is. Now, that's not to say that there isn't going to be one. I think I mean, really, hopefully for them, there is one, right? Nintendo's been in business for a long time. Like, I assume they know what they're doing, but like, as of late, I'm starting to question it because I don't know. Also, if they wanted to be the biggest scumbag imaginable, they could easily just re-release all of the Game Boy and DS and 3DS Pokemon games on the Switch 2 exclusively. And the reason that would be an absolute scumbag move is because there's no reason why they should be exclusive to Switch 2, right? Like, if a Game Boy Color can play Pokemon Yellow version, then a Switch 1 can also play Pokemon Yellow version, right? So can the 3DS. We already got it, right? So if they wanted to, they could lock those games to the newer console for literally no other reason than to sell more consoles, right? And you know, people would do it. I mean, how many of you, maybe not you specifically, but you know, a lot of the Pokemon fanboys would go out there just to buy, you know, Fire Red on their Switch 2, right? Like, they would do that. I know they would do that, right? In fact, I would probably even get Fire Red on the Switch 2, or maybe they would just throw it into the Game Boy Advance thing, which as a monthly subscription would drive me insane. So maybe I don't know. But either way, my point is they have an easy route to just do it, but they'd be huge scumbags if they did it. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't give Nintendo any ideas because they have no problem being scumbags all on their own, because here we can see that first Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Con color variants have been announced and they're out next month. However, the new Joy-Cons won't match the inside of the Nintendo Switch 2. Here we see a light sort of teal, or a green I should say, and purple color for the Joy-Cons, and the article goes on to say the Joy-Con 2 light purple light green controllers will be released on February 12th. The controllers, which mark the first time the Switch 2 system has deviated from the default light blue light orange Joy-Con 2s, will also come with matching wrist straps. No pricing information is currently available. However, a default set of Joy-Con 2 controllers currently costs $100 $100. While some limited edition Joy-Con controllers would be given different pricing due to the limited nature of them, standard color variations were typically around the same price as the original. That's for the original Switch, by the way. So yeah, this thing is it's gonna be $100, right? There's no way it's gonna be lower. If I hope it's lower. I want to be wrong here, just to be clear. They should lower the price. $100, bro. What are you guys on? $100. Hello? The console is $450. God forbid you break a controller. Now you can't play it. You need to spend another $100. That's almost a quarter of the price of the whole console with tax. Maybe it's 20% of the entire console is the Joy-Cons. Hello? But here's the worst part, okay? Because you might be looking at this and you're saying, oh, Omniarch, it's just a color variant. Who cares, right? Like, it's just a new color. It doesn't matter, right? Well, first of all, I care. It's $100, right? But second of all, yes, it looks very pretty in these images, but remember, when you attach this to the controller, you don't even see the color. You actually legitimately only see the color around the joysticks, right? And that's the same thing for when you've got the console. When you snap these onto the console, you don't see the color that's shown here, okay? So literally you're paying $100 just to change the color around the joystick, unless you actually play with the Joy-Con separated from the console, which, by the way, I feel like nobody does that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of people, when they play the Switch, it's either in handheld mode, so you're not going to see this color, or it's docked and you've attached it to the controller, in which case you're still not going to see the color, okay? So $100 just to change the color of the spot around the joystick. Like, buddy, why didn't you just change the whole body of it to green and the whole body of this to purple? Then at least you would see it right here, right? Like, it's such an obvious solution. Like, what are you doing? But decisions like this lead to articles like this, assessing Nintendo valuation as shares pull back after multi-year run. The share price has recently softened, with a 30-day share price return of 14.2% decline and a 90-day return of a 17.6% decline. However, the 1-year total shareholder return of 13.2% and 3-year shareholder return of about 2x shows that longer term holders have still seen gains. So let's take a look at the stock price ourselves here. Okay, we've got Nintendo over here. It's actually a Japanese stock, okay, but in the last 5 days we're down 4.4%. In the last month we're down 19.1%. In the last 6 months we're down 28.48%, which is not good, okay? And I'm not just picking these time frames because they're bad ones, right? Obviously if we go to the 1 year, it's up 12%, right? But the 6-month time frame is critical because that's when the Switch 2 came out, right? Like, remember, the Switch 2 is officially 7 months old at this point, okay? So this is how the stock has performed in the last 6 months after they launched their next big thing, the successor to the Switch 1, which is one of the most successful consoles they've ever released, right? In fact, it might have actually passed the Nintendo DS officially at this point, because they were so close. So it could actually just straight up be their most successful console ever, okay? And here we see the 6 months following its successor, we're down almost 30%. That's crazy, okay? They got to pick the hype back up for the Switch 2, and one great way to do that would be to lower the price, which one retailer has already started doing in 2026. Let's take a look over at Micro Center again. For those of you that don't know, Micro Center was the retailer that before Christmas lowered the price of the Switch from $449 to $399, and this was not the bundled Mario Kart thing. This was just the base model, the base unit. They lowered it by $50 right around Christmas, okay? Clearly the units were not moving like they thought they would move, and so they lowered the price. And you know, all of the Nintendo fanboys who were coping and seething and just don't understand business at all, they're like, oh, it's just a sale for the holidays. Oh, it's just a sale for a holiday. Okay, well, here we are. It is January 8th, and we can see they actually have introduced the same discount for members only. Here we can see we have a $50 saving with member pricing, and you can be a member for free until 2027. So it literally doesn't even cost you anything to get the $50 discount. In fact, this was brought to my attention by Wario64 over on Twitter. They tweeted out a few hours ago, earlier this morning, that the Switch 2 is $399 at Micro Center. You could see the the attached sale price or whatever, it says right here member pricing only. Okay, but again, literally doesn't cost anything to be a member right now. There's probably, if you don't cancel it in time, they probably will charge you. Okay, so set like a reminder on your phone, cancel it in 11 months from now. And I can already see the excuse here, right? I can already see the fanboys, they're picking up their pitchforks to defend their multi-billion-dollar corporation again. Aren't you guys tired? Aren't you exhausted of doing that? But the argument here is going to be, oh, they're just doing this so they can get more members and people are going to forget about it, then they're going to get charged a membership fee in a year. And it's like, yeah, that's probably right. Yes, probably. But of all the different things Micro Center sells, they picked the Switch 2 to lower the price of. I mean, like, come on, bro, come on. They know it's not selling at 450. They already have the data to show however many they sold at 400 from last month, from December. They probably looked at the sales numbers and like, oh, well, actually, like, it's better to have it at 400 anyway. We'll do that. And here's the feedback from people over on Twitter. The Switch 2 is the most consistently discounted new console I've ever seen. Yeah, that's because new consoles don't ever get discounts in their first year, except for the Switch 2 and the 3DS, because the 3DS was very expensive at launch, and that was a permanent price reduction, right? So, and that was from Nintendo themselves. So yeah, we could point at the 3DS. So really, like, is the Switch 2 the new 3DS, right? Honestly, I don't think Nintendo would even be mad about that. If the Switch 2 sells as much as the 3DS, I think they're going to be happy about that, because it's more expensive than the 3DS was anyway, so they're still making more money. This person says the real price is $350, but they had to gouge all the Nintendo adults an extra $100 on release because they will buy whatever they release. True, but this is just the beginning of 2026, folks. Today the argument's going to be, oh, it's just to get more members on for Micro Center, right? 2 or 3 weeks ago the argument was like, oh, they just have excess supply of this console. We swear it's flying off the shelves, but they just have extras of it. Like, okay, yeah, sure, buddy. We're a week into 2026 and we are already going to see people start to make excuses for this $50 price reduction on the Switch 2. So if you thought the price reductions for this console at retailers was going to just go away in 2026, I don't know, maybe it won't, right? Maybe. A lot of people feel like Nintendo's going to raise the price of this thing, okay? And I think that is still on the table just because of all the huge price increases we see coming from the AI space, right? But at the same time, it's like retailers are painting a different picture, right? Retailers are painting the picture of, you actually need to lower the price if you want to sell more of this thing. And so I think Nintendo's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, where they probably know they should lower the price, but they also are looking at the rising cost of components and saying, well, okay, if we want to keep making money on this thing, we actually have to raise the price. I wouldn't be surprised, and maybe this is just me fence sitting, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if they just left the price alone. They just leave it. They're like, whatever, just leave it at 449 and let the retailers figure out what they want to do with it. That's my guess, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But guys, none of this is really looking good for the Switch 2. They didn't really wrap up 2025 strong like they probably thought they would, outside of Japan at least. And now that we're going into 2026 and we're already seeing, I know there's a little asterisk there, but we're already seeing a little bit of a price drop this year already, and their stock price has taken a nosedive. I don't know, guys, but hey, at least Nintendo has the new Mario Galaxy movie to fall back on and point to that and be like, hey, at least we did that, right? And you know, I don't know about you guys, but for a gaming company, their biggest upcoming release is a movie, not a video game, for their newest console. I don't know, doesn't feel good, but hey, we only just entered the second week of 2026, and surely, right, surely they will release a big game this year, right? I mean, it's not gonna just be third parties, right? Surely we're not just gonna get Mario Tennis and Yoshi's Mysterious Book. Like, okay, we'll have to wait and see. But guys, if you made it to the end of the video, consider dropping a thumbs up on it. It really helps out the channel a ton, and you guys might think you're subscribed because you've seen a ton of my videos, but you're actually not. Double check down below.